Well, hello everyone. My name's Jason Ingram. I was the judge for this year's competition, Nature Unbound. Firstly, I'd like to say a huge congratulations to all the photographers that have entered this year's competition. You've made my job incredibly hard once again to pick out the winners from such a huge selection of very, very good entries indeed. And I thoroughly enjoyed the process of judging. I always thoroughly enjoy judging this competition because it's great to see that so many people are taking pictures. There's probably more people taking pictures than ever before because of course we've all got phones now that can take particularly good pictures. It's great to see that so many people do enter with an actual camera. I always believe personally that a camera will take a better picture than your phone, but of course if the moment happens, and as we all know, photography is all about the instant moment, if that actually happens and your phone is the only device you have for capturing that picture, then so be it. But let's start with the 11 and under first, because as I said, there was so many incredibly good pictures again entered for this category. So we are going to start by revealing the winners for the 11 and under. And the first prize and winner goes to Naomi Check for Nature Doesn't Let the Tree Down Even If the Roots Move Up. So my judging notes said this: using black and white for this image has really accentuated the root system of this tree, which is exactly what the photographer wanted. Not only have they created a striking silhouette, but the lighting has added extra drama to the image. There is so much movement within this composition. It looks as though the tree is actually uprooting itself. Now, I thought this particular image was handled in an incredible way. I loved the fact that the photographer did choose to shoot this in black and white, or whether it was in colour and converted to black and white. But because of the nature of the image and the image being such a strong silhouette, I felt that the use of a monochrome image worked incredibly well, and the whole sense of having this sun that comes up in between the tree, the root system, and actually bursts through the middle of the tree, creating this lovely graduated effect into the center. So you had this amazing tonal shift from something very, very bright to very dark edges, which always works incredibly well for a picture, because one of the things that we do when we view images is, of course, we're seeking out points of contrast. And the photographer on this instance has actually taken the eye directly into the right part of the picture by positioning themselves so that the sun is coming up between the trees, and of course those root systems are coming out towards the camera lens, which creates this incredibly brilliant dynamic image. Absolutely wonderful. Well done, Naomi. So now I'm going to go on to the highly commendeds for the 11 and under. And the next one is Maggie McClung from the USA. And this one's called Riverside Secret View. And my notes for this are as follows. Photography is often about having good looking skills, trying to find a different angle to what would otherwise be a very plain composition. The photographer has done exactly that with this image. The diamond really helps the composition and creates a perfect border for this view. Very well observed. And that's exactly it. You really get the sense that for this picture, the photographer, Maggie, has really looked around and seen a wonderful view, wonderful landscape in front of themselves, but actually realised that rather than taking the obvious view, trying to find a different composition. And as we all know, that when we're trying to compose a picture, certainly with a landscape, quite often photographers will always say it's incredibly important to get some sense of foreground interest. And I think that Maggie's excelled on this, because she's not only got some incredible foreground interest, she's actually created a window to frame the picture that we're seeing. The next highly commended in the 11 and under is by Theo Vinton. from Shepton Mallet, which is called Working Together. And this particular image really caught my eye actually, and these are my notes. An interesting juxtaposition of the trees and the wooden fence, beautifully backlit to add luminosity to the image. The composition really draws the eye through to the lake beyond, a lovely use of contrast. So once again, as I said earlier, the thing that one of the key elements we need to work towards when composing pictures is contrast, because that's exactly where the eye will be drawn towards. And I think Working Together truly feels the right title for this particular image, and it's just that lovely sense of, it feels like it's very early in the season. It could be summer, but for me it feels like it's probably early summer, and that lovely sense of light. You can almost smell being in that particular image. And having the wooden fence along the edge of the picture, only a third into the picture, so compositionally the photographer is working with the rule of thirds here really, because it's just enough to show that the actual fence itself is retaining the landscape beyond. And one of the key thing that really draws my eye to this picture is the use of light. And I always feel that, irrelevant of what the title and brief of the competition is, if you've got good light, you're halfway there. So I think Theo's done an exceptional job there, so well done, Theo. So now we're moving on to the 12 to 17-year-olds, and the winner is Maximilian Pakowski from Poland, and the title of the image is called Group Flight. And here are my notes for this particular winning entry. A fantastic capture which really shows off the photographer's skill. Beautifully lit, showing all the detail in the bird's wings. The backlighting and the warmth in the light really adds to the drama and movement in this image. Absolutely stunning. And I truly mean that, because I felt that this image shows true skills in a photographer, because not only have they produced the most wonderful image in this gorgeous golden hour, but they've actually managed to technically freeze some action, allow some action to blur, and get a really wonderful sense of backlighting, that the image itself is almost monochrome. We've got this gorgeous golden light that really shines through and backlights all the wings, that creates this wonderful image. So a very worthy winner, and one of my overall favourite images actually. So well done indeed for Maximilian's image there, really worthy winner. And the first of the highly commended is Arthur Check, I believe probably part of the same family, looking at the 11 and unders, obviously a family full of very good photographers. So Arthur's image was called Even the Biggest Monster Can Be Bound, and I felt that this image really took on the title of the competition, Nature Unbound, and these are my notes for this particular entry. I love the literal interpretation of the brief. It feels that this human machine has been completely taken over by nature. The composition works really well, as the strong out of focus upright branches in the foreground really captivate the viewer's attention. And that was one of the things that really drew me to this picture. It's a very bold thing to do, but it works, and it's paid off, that the photographers actually framed the image with these quite strong graphic shapes in the foreground of the image, but because they're nice and soft and out of focus, that the eye goes straight through, this quite menacing composition to the machine, the digger in the background. And it truly feels that nature's taking control again of this machine. And one of the other things, just to add to the composition, was the fact that the photographer, again, hasn't taken this particular picture in midday sunlight. They've taken it later in the day or earlier in the day, so the lighting itself has a gorgeous tone to it. So really well done, Arthur. That's a great picture. The next in the highly commended is Adrita Day, and Adrita Day's title is called Beautiful Nuthatch, and my notes for this one is as follows. I had to look at this image a couple of times before I saw the nuthatch. I love the subtlety in the composition. The perfect use of differential focusing has allowed the background to be very soft, which really accentuates the tree and the bird. The colour of this image is also very pleasing. Now that is exactly what I had to do with this particular image, because I must admit I did go over it a couple of times, and it wasn't until I read what the title of it was, Beautiful Nuthatch, that I actually returned to the image several times, because as I said, we see so many wildlife shots now where the actual wildlife itself is center frame and it's really big in the frame. But with this particular image, the photographer has kept the actual bird itself to be incredibly small. And the more I looked at this image, the more I thought that that's a really interesting decision. And I think because there's such subtlety in the colour and the colouring of the bird as well, combined with the fact that the photographer's managed to really soften the background so well, that the whole branch and the tree system with the bird itself is sharp against this wonderful watercolour backdrop. I thought the photographer handled that incredibly well. So well done, Adrita, that's amazing. And the last of the highly commended in the 12 to 17 is by Lucas Costello, and it's called Considering a New Path. And my notes for this are as follows. A really great photograph of this heron, very fortunate that it is kept out of the shaft of light, as this has kept all the detail in the image. The light on the bird is bouncing off the path, which adds a glow, a brilliant portrait, and that's exactly what it is. It's a great portrait of this bird, and I'm sure the photographer was considering all these points that I've mentioned, because one of the things that would have been, I think would have actually been very distracting, was if the heron was actually in the path of the light, because the contrast would have been too strong. But this works in a very different way, because the light runs straight across the bottom third of the frame, but because the bird is quite bright and it's just in the shadow, it really draws the eye into it, and it's absolutely pin sharp on the bird. So the photographer's done an exceptional job here of actually capturing the bird and creating a very, very nice composition with it as well. So well done, Lucas, that's a great shot. So we're now moving on to the ages 18 and over, so the adult category, and I'm going to start by naming the winner, which is Keith Horton, Australia, and that's Glowworm Tunnel. So my notes are as follows. A stunning image in every way. Lovely use of colour and atmosphere, and incredibly skillful to be able to capture this. I can see that a lot of planning has gone into this shot. The image draws the eye straight into the tunnel, but the photographer has kept enough interest in the foliage to keep the composition balanced. A wonderful low-key image and a very worthy winner. So to elaborate on that, this image is absolutely stunning. The photographer's managed to, what a wonderful phenomenon anyway with the glowworms in the tunnel, but the composition and the whole feel of this image I thought was just absolutely stunning. I mean, it's using a very, very muted palette of just greens and blues and basically very low-key tones, but because of that, and it's very, very subtle, the lighting, it draws the eye straight into the tunnel where the glowworms are. And of course there's that little bit of moisture on the railway line, or a puddle of water, which is reflecting the glowworms as well. And just that very nice soft touch of green all the way around, vignetting around the centre of the composition. That I think for this, I know that the photographer would have planned this shot all the way through, because there's no way that someone would just arrive and see this happening and be able to compose and shoot it, because obviously one of the things is it's a very long exposure, and I can see it's actually 120 seconds that the photographer has had the aperture open for. So number one, it would have had to been a fairly still night, because there's not much movement in any of that foliage around the centre of the archway, and they would have been on a tripod for sure for 2 minutes, and just a wonderful picture. So incredibly well done, Keith. That's very well deserved. So the first of the highly commendeds for the adults is Pavel Zygmunt from Ireland, and the title is Magical Land, and my notes are as follows. The light in this image is absolutely beautiful, and the composition is so well considered. The S shape of the river pulls the eye into the image, where you are left with a house and a most remarkable cloud formation. I'm sure the photographer was aware that this photograph was going to be special while shooting. The exposure is perfect, enough detail in the shadows whilst retaining all the lovely highlights and colour both in the clouds and the river. Just wonderful. I mean, what can I say about this image? It's slightly Wizard of Oz, isn't it? It's got that sort of lovely, I mean, to call it Magical Land is absolutely perfect. I mean, the whole thing about this composition is incredible. I mean, it ticks all the boxes. The light's incredible. The composition is absolutely perfect. The fact that the photographers positioned themselves so that the house is centre to the composition is absolutely paramount to the success of it. And I just think, I mean, it was so difficult to choose a winner in this category, because all the entries were absolutely remarkable. But as I said, very, very well done indeed for this shot. I mean, I would have been incredibly pleased to have taken it as well. So well done, Pavel. The next highly commended is from photographer DS, Shetson Mallet, and it's Sunrise over RSPB, Ham Wall and Glastonbury Tor. Again, wonderful, wonderful image, and I'm going to read out my notes first. The photographer has taken full advantage of the golden hour in this image and composed a perfect image of Glastonbury Tor. The element that really holds the image together for me are the backlit reeds in the foreground, which really helps the composition breathe. The contrast is very well balanced with the sky, so keeps the viewer's eyes in the right place. I also like that there is more sky in the frame. It helps compositionally as the Tor is centre frame. So when I say that, it's that whole sense of using the rule of thirds composition again, rather than positioning everything centre frame. The photographer has actually decided to, because the Tor is the centre of the frame, which is the right thing to do because it draws the eye straight into it, but they've also given more breathing room to the image by creating 2/3 of the composition with the actual sky itself. But as I was saying, that the element that really helps the composition for me is the fact that you've got these wonderful reeds that are so recognisable from the Somerset levels, that are heavily backlit, that takes the eye straight into the composition. So well done for that. That's an amazing picture. The next highly commended in the adult category is from RS, Shepton Mallet, and it's called Unravelled by the Wind. My notes are as follows. A really good use of the rule of thirds in this composition. The seed heads have been positioned to the right-hand third of the frame, which has added extra interest to the image. The lighting is beautiful and really shows all the delicate detail in the seeds as they float off into the composition. A simple yet very pleasing photograph. And again, exactly that. Rather than putting the subject matter, centre frame, the photographer has really considered using the compositional technique of rule of thirds. I've used that quite a bit in this judging process, but it's really great to see that photographers are thinking about their composition. And of course, the other thing that is fantastic with this image is the subtle use of tone, obviously later in the season, so it's a seed head. The composition relies heavily on backlighting, which I believe is always a great way to treat this type of picture, because the fact that the light's coming from behind the subject matter means that all the subtle detail is shown off beautifully, so well done. So the last in the adults for highly commended is by Jackie Schletter from the USA. And my notes are as follows. This is such a striking image, monochromatic in its tones, a beautiful portrait and so well framed in the composition. The light is extraordinary and so well executed in the crop. I think that this has been very well processed in post-production also. Well done. I mean, it's just wonderful. I mean, I just think that it's actually titled Keeping Me Company, which I didn't say before, sorry about that, but I think that that whole sense and use of contrast again, because obviously the bird itself is very, very high key, but the bird is surrounded in a very subtle light. I mean, a very, very dramatic light, but coming in from the left-hand side, and it really positions it perfectly against the darker tones. I mean, it's just a wonderful portrait, and I feel that this person really knows how to use the camera and has done an exceptional job of framing this bird. So well done, Jackie, that's incredible. So I hope you've enjoyed the process of looking through all the winning entries and the highly commendeds. I've certainly really enjoyed the process, and it's always really interesting for me to see the work of so many other photographers and how they interpret a brief. And I've said this before, and I said it in my notes at the beginning of the process of putting the competition together, that Nature Unbound is quite a difficult brief to work to. And I've always said that it's really important that photographers consider what the title is, but also, more importantly, think about the lights, the composition, and how to tackle that side of it, because I feel that although some of the entries weren't technically Nature Unbound, I feel that everything has been taken in nature, and you can apply the title of Nature Unbound to almost anything really. So I feel that all the photographers have done an incredible job, so well done. And as I said, I hope you've really enjoyed looking through all the winning entries. So from me, Jason Ingram, I'd just like to say well done everyone once again, and thank you.